The temple. Upon entering the cave, I was in a state of complete astonishment. The gemstones I could barely see in the dim light of the sunset were the most magnificent amethyst crystals, and they covered the entirety of this beautiful and mystical cave. The cave was decked out in amethyst, complete with stalactites made of the gemstone. A river flowed through the cave, leading to who knows where. But the real gem, the most incredible part of this wondrous cave, was the structure that lay in the middle of it. It appeared to be a temple. Spiraling as high as the cave and higher, this temple was covered in amethyst and marble, the spiral staircase sprouting from its marble base, the wood railing draped in ivy. The ivy and other plants flowed from the railing, giving it the most ethereal allure. I plunged my feet back into the shallow river, approached the base, and walked up. Walking for what seemed like forever, I climbed around 8 flights of stairs, grabbing into the greenery-covered railings as I got higher. Once I got to the top of the cave, a door to the marble temple presented itself to me. I opened the door and discovered the wealth of resources inside. Candles, herbs, dried flowers, paints, scrolls, ink, plumes, maps, clay. Everything I could ever crave stood on a mahogany desk upon entry into the temple. This felt like an altar to the goddess of art, and I was to be a worshipper. I lit candles and placed them across the room and began the process of artistic expression. Opening a drawer, I saw 4 scrolls sitting in front of me. I unfolded the empty scrolls and pulled out a plume, dipping it in ink. I lit an extra candle by the desk to help me see. As I poured my heart out, I wrote letters to my loved ones, my past self, and to the universe itself. I unraveled the canvas, opened the jars of paint, and made my visions come true. Visions of faraway galaxies, nascent stars, blooming flowers, bustling cities. I told my story and documented the images freshly imprinted into my soul. I was brought to tears. I had discovered a way to tell my story. Chapter 5: Sanctuary. Wow, things have definitely changed around here for our main character. They held their breath, pushed through the water, and made their way into the cave. Once inside, they did some discovering and soul-searching, and decided to walk up the temple. I definitely see myself as the type of person who would enter the temple. I'm a very curious person, and even after treacherous experiences, my curiosity keeps me going. Once they got into the temple, they discovered a trove of materials useful to them. They sat down and began one of my favorite processes of all time. They let it all out. One of my favorite things about art is that it allows the artist to harness and express emotion. In my opinion, the best art is that which contains a part of your soul, a reflection of inner meaning through artistic technique and talent. It is definitely a challenge to harness your emotion, but once you get a grasp on it, a whole new level of creativity is unlocked. I refuse to believe in the notion that we are not all creative. We all have experiences that impact our emotional state in one way or another, but it is the job of the inner artist to harness the emotional state and translate it into something tangible, physically, spiritually, or otherwise. But what is an artist, you may ask? Philosophers and scholars, and even artists themselves, have been giving answers for thousands of years, and personally, I don't think I have a proper answer I can definitively stand by. What I can say as of now is that I believe that an artist is a person who can translate an idea into a reality based on their understanding of the world. As long as you use creative passion, relevant technique, personal experience, and commitment, you can make all the art you can with whatever medium works for you. As I've been stating throughout this entire project, we all have a great depth of feeling and experience already within us, and now as artists, we need to get it out. There are many different ways to do this, but there are also so many ways to make art. You can dance, act, paint, draw, sculpt, sing, write, perform, and so much more. Even within each of these, there are hundreds of variation. Finding your medium isn't always easy, but the best way to do so is to try until you find what suits you. Once you find something that works, your process truly begins. Now, as I've mentioned, there is an entire process involved in getting our experiences and emotions translated onto paper, or whatever medium works best for you. Personally, the best way to translate your feelings into art is to communicate with yourself. I ask myself questions like, what do I really want to write about? Whose story am I telling here? What emotions am I trying to invoke in people? What is the meaning of this specific art to me and an audience? Being able to answer these effectively will get you the best results, and even if they don't, practice is your best friend. My favorite medium is writing, but for others, it could be a host of different artistic methods. As long as you know what works for you and you speak your truth and passion into a project, you're golden. I've known many artists, many of whom are always disappointed in their work, although said work is usually stunning. Perspective is so important, and so much of art is in the eye of the beholder. If you make something you deem to be the best of your ability and that pleases you, you've expressed yourself fully. Although I've talked about what art is and means, that doesn't mean all art is good art. Good art is entirely subjective, but there are a few unifying qualities. For instance, as a writer, I think some of the best writing is that which creates a sense of ambiance, develops characters, gives meaning, and most importantly of all, shows great depth. If I can feel your research, including literal project research, stylistic inspiration from other authors, attention to detail, and general mastery of style, I deem the work good art. I am a firm believer that those who know a lot of relevant information tend to have an easier time writing. Knowledge is so important in art, and developing skills that come with consuming lots of art, learning from mistakes, listening to critique, and practicing your skills. Knowledge matters a lot because it is the basis of our personal and societal databank of information, storing cultural, personal, and meaningful artifacts that we may retain in the future. Knowledge combined with feeling is so powerful. Generally speaking, knowledge is something that is built up over time. I think that sharpening your mind is much like sharpening a knife. If you stop for a while, you risk losing some of the edge you once had. This can be true of traditional book knowledge, but it applies to art as well. The more time and energy you spend in perfecting your craft, the greater artist you'll become by your own standards. I've spoken to people well into their 40s and 50s who have mentioned that their most educated years were near the end of their schooling, and that's it. The average Canadian reads about 12 books a year, which I think is somewhat of a lie. I, for one, basically only read books that are assigned to me by professors in class, and I almost never read in the summer. People who've been out of school forever often don't take time to invest in knowledge, which I think should be changed a bit. One of my favorite things about learning is being able to see the evolution in my knowledge, comparing how I used to think to how I currently think. I see evolution as a benefit, not a burden. We all change, and we invest in our art and our minds. Those changes generally end better. Untold stories. I waited a few hours until the paint had dried and the ink was set onto the scrolls, and I proceeded to roll my artistic creations up, placing them in a brown wicker basket. I had just noticed a door with a golden handle at the back of the temple, and I walked over. Opening the door led me to a staircase, and I could see steam exit as I opened it. The stairs were short, narrow, and wet, 20 or so, and led me to a higher level of the temple. This area was in all-white marble and had an open sky view, higher than all its surroundings. It was surrounded by white columns covered in greenery, forming a circle. The top of the temple, the part I was in, stuck out of a mountain range overlooking a rainforest. At the bottom edge of this floor was a waterfall, flowing for hundreds of feet below. The floor itself was also made of marble, and the air in the space was humid and calming. The largest portion of the altar was dedicated to a white library, a library containing thousands of scrolls and books outside wrapped in greenery. I sorted through some of the books, and my mind was in astonishment. I could not read most of them, as they were written in 1,000 different languages. Placing my hand on the scrolls, I grasped the physical material, feeling its true weight. The weightiest thing in the world is the emotional state, and words reflect this quite well. Scrolls and hieroglyphics, Greek symbols, Vedic scriptures, Chinese characters. I selected the emotionally heaviest works and threw them into my basket. Taking about a dozen works or so, I collected my wicker basket and walked to the center, right near the waterfall overlooking the jungle, and pulled out each work. Unfolding the scrolls one by one, I closed my eyes and whispered. In peak concentration, I placed my hand to the sky and then down onto the scroll. Whispering once again, the wind whispered back, reading me the richest knowledge. I read each work, going back to the library and selecting more until I was full. The day had come and gone, and so had the night, and it was day again, and I had finished. Once the last of the works was complete, I placed everything back, rolling up my artwork, placing it in the basket, tucking it right next to the library. Empty-handed and full of knowledge, I basked in the sun, admiring the waterfall.